It was supposed to be just another routine cargo flight, an Emirates freighter arriving at Hong Kong before sunrise. The weather was calm, the skies clear, and the runway dry. But within seconds of a perfect landing, a Boeing 747 veered off the runway and plunged straight into the bay, striking a service truck and killing 2 airport workers instantly. The pilots survived. The landing data looked flawless. The weather was perfect. The question haunting investigators ever since is, how does a perfectly stable approach end in total disaster? It would take scientists and aviation engineers months to piece together what truly happened in those few seconds between touchdown and tragedy. And what they found would change how we think about one of the world's most trusted aircraft, the 747 itself. On October 20th, just before 4 a.m. local time, Emirates Flight 9788, operated by the Turkish carrier AirACT, descended into Hong Kong after a long journey from Dubai. The aircraft, a 1993 Boeing 747-481, was one of 2 heavy freighters leased to Emirates to offset the company's cargo shortage. The flight path was smooth, every instrument reading normal. The approach controller cleared the crew for a high-speed descent toward runway 07 left, a common procedure for heavy jets. The landing lights pierced the fogless night. ADS-B data confirmed the jet crossed the threshold perfectly aligned, touching down exactly on the 1,000-foot markers, on speed, on glide slope, textbook perfect. But within seconds of that flawless touchdown, something invisible took control. The aircraft, traveling at roughly 87 knots, suddenly began drifting left. Not a slow drift, an aggressive yaw, like a hand wrenching the plane off the center line. Seconds later, the 747 left the concrete, tore through a service road, and disappeared nose first into the bay. From the start, investigators were baffled. The weather was ideal. The winds, though crossing from the north, were less than half of what the 747 was certified to handle. There was no rain, no slick runway, no gusts. Fatigue was ruled out. This was an experienced Turkish crew on a familiar route. The approach was fully stabilized, with no signs of overcorrection or imbalance. In aviation, runway excursions like this are almost always preceded by warning signs: too much speed, unstable descent, poor alignment. But this time, every variable checked out perfectly. That left one terrifying possibility. Something mechanical had gone catastrophically wrong. Engineers began to suspect the aircraft's nose wheel steering or braking hydraulics had failed in the instant after touchdown. But how could a system designed with multiple redundancies, 3 independent hydraulic circuits and dual-channel anti-skid control, fail so completely without a single cockpit warning? The black boxes would have to tell the story. When divers recovered the flight data recorders from the shallow waters of Hong Kong Bay, the evidence inside stunned investigators. In the final 10 seconds of recorded data, a pressure drop was detected in Hydraulic System 2, the system responsible for controlling the aircraft's left side brakes and steering assembly. Simultaneously, the cockpit voice recorder captured the captain's alarmed shout, "Left pedal unresponsive, steering gone," followed by the co-pilot's desperate attempt to counter-steer. But it was too late. The loss of hydraulic pressure had caused the nose gear's servo actuator to freeze, locking the steering mechanism at a slight left angle. Once the right brakes engaged unevenly, the aircraft had no chance. At 400,000 kilograms, momentum took over, dragging the freighter off the tarmac like a ship caught in a rip current. By the time the crew pulled the throttles to idle and deployed reverse thrust, the plane was already skidding toward the edge of the runway, powerless to stop its slide into the sea. When Boeing engineers joined the investigation, they discovered something deeply unsettling. The hydraulic line connected to the left steering manifold had ruptured internally, not from impact, but from fatigue cracking caused by a design oversight dating back decades. A microscopic flaw in the titanium tubing, aggravated by years of thermal expansion and high-pressure cycles, had weakened the line until it failed without warning. It was a defect so rare that it escaped maintenance inspections entirely. But here's where it gets worse. The failure mode created a feedback loop. The sudden hydraulic pressure loss didn't just cripple the steering, it overloaded the braking valve logic, forcing one side of the brake system to seize while the other released. The result? A violent, uncontrollable swerve. Scientists running simulations confirmed that once this specific failure began, recovery was mathematically impossible. Even the best pilots in the world could not have saved Flight 9788 that morning. When rescuers reached the cockpit, the crew was dazed but alive, an almost miraculous outcome considering the scale of destruction. The first officer suffered a fractured arm, the captain, deep lacerations and shock. In the aftermath, they would become the key witnesses in a mystery no one could yet explain. Their testimonies matched the black box data almost word for word. They described a sudden left pull, a sensation as though the aircraft had been grabbed by an invisible force. The captain recalled that when he applied right rudder and full reverse thrust, the aircraft didn't respond. It only skidded faster. Investigators confirmed that at the time of impact, both pilots had already executed every procedure by the book. The checklist for hydraulic failure was irrelevant. There was no warning light, no system caution, nothing to signal what was about to happen. In aviation, such silent failures are the most feared. The pilots became both survivors and symbols of a terrifying truth. Even perfect flying cannot overcome invisible design flaws. As the fuselage was hoisted from the bay, forensic engineers swarmed over the wreckage. The damage pattern told a story written in twisted metal. The left side landing gear was jammed at a 28-degree deflection, its hydraulic actuator frozen mid-stroke. Inside, residue analysis revealed the presence of aerosolized hydraulic fluid, confirming a mid-flight rupture rather than an impact break. But what shocked investigators most was the discovery of microfractures in the surrounding titanium tubing, tiny cracks so small they had escaped even ultrasonic inspection. These fissures were traced back to stress patterns created during the aircraft's original assembly in 1993. Over 30 years of pressure cycles had widened them until, in the split second after touchdown, the tube burst from within. The fluid loss cascaded through the system, cutting steering control and destabilizing braking logic. In essence, the aircraft had landed flawlessly only to self-destruct under its own age. What made this finding even more disturbing was that the same model and same component was still flying in dozens of freighters worldwide. When the preliminary report was released, Boeing faced intense scrutiny. The company had already weathered a decade of criticism following the 737 MAX crises, but this was different. This wasn't software, it was material science. Investigators found that the titanium alloy used in specific hydraulic lines had been supplied by a subcontractor whose records from the 1990s were incomplete. Quality tests were either missing or inconsistent. Over time, Boeing had issued multiple service bulletins addressing potential corrosion in hydraulic systems, but none specifically mentioned fatigue cracking in the steering manifold. After Hong Kong, that changed overnight. Every operator of older 747s was ordered to inspect their nose gear hydraulic assemblies. In several cases, early signs of microfractures were discovered, proof that Flight 9788's failure was not an isolated event. For scientists, it was both vindication and horror. They had solved the mystery, but it came at the cost of 2 lives on the ground and a blow to the legend of the indestructible 747. The deeper scientists dug, the more elegant and terrifying the failure mechanism appeared. Hydraulic pressure in the 747's nose-wheel steering system operates at nearly 3,000 psi. When one of the titanium lines ruptured, it didn't explode outward. Instead, the internal collapse caused a pressure asymmetry that fooled the system's sensors. In less than 0.2 seconds, the aircraft's computers believed the steering had centered, when in reality, the actuator was jammed left. When the right side brakes applied, the imbalance amplified into a yawing moment strong enough to overcome both rudder and engine thrust. Computational models built at Delft University and MIT recreated the entire event. The simulation proved that the aircraft's deviation began exactly 1.4 seconds after touchdown, the same point recorded in the black box. In the end, science confirmed what instinct could not. The AirACT crew never stood a chance. Their landing was perfect. The system that betrayed them was not. For half a century, the Boeing 747 has been called the Queen of the Skies, a symbol of perfection, of strength, of engineering that defied gravity itself. But on that quiet morning in Hong Kong, the Queen fell silent. Not because of human error, not because of weather, but because of something no one could see. A microscopic crack hidden deep inside a line of metal smaller than a pencil. That single fracture, invisible to every inspection, every checklist, and every precaution, was enough to bring down one of the most reliable aircraft ever built. When scientists finally connected the dots, the truth was both terrifying and humbling. The AirACT 747 had not failed from neglect or incompetence. It failed from time itself. 3 decades of pressure, heat, and vibration had created a weakness that even the world's best engineers could not predict. And when it finally gave way, it did so silently, without warning, in the one moment where precision mattered most. The tragedy wasn't born from chaos. It was born from perfection undone by nature's quiet persistence. The findings would go on to rewrite maintenance procedures for every 747 still flying. Boeing issued new directives, airlines rushed to replace old hydraulic lines, and scientists used the event as a case study in material fatigue, how even the strongest alloys can age in ways no human eye can detect. The official report called it an unforeseeable systems failure. But to the families of those who died on the ground, and to the pilots who lived through the crash, it was something else entirely. A reminder that perfection in aviation is an illusion, one that must be chased but never trusted. The 747 will continue to fly, its legend intact, its silhouette still majestic against the horizon. But from that night onward, every touchdown carries a quiet echo of Hong Kong, a whisper that even the sky's greatest machine can fall victim to the smallest flaw. So if this story made you rethink how fragile safety can be, don't look away. Subscribe to this channel. We bring you the truths that aviation tries to bury. Turn on notifications because the next discovery may rewrite everything you thought you knew about flight. Share this with someone who still believes machines never fail. And tell me in the comments, was this just a tragic accident? Or the moment the Queen of the Skies finally revealed her only weakness?